everyone, this is Dr. Liz, and you're listening to Include with Dr. Liz. This show is about everyone, all people, including you. It's about people and their diverse lived experience in this world. I chat with guests to get to know them, their identities, and their inclusion needs, so we all have an opportunity to understand how best to include them, so together we can create a world where everyone thrives. Seth is an all or nothing kind of guy who can be found either hiking or relaxing on his weekends. Described by others as kind, patient, generous, and inspirational, he claims his greatest accomplishment is surviving to 44. Identifying as LGBTQI+, and a gender minority and a cultural minority, and diagnosed with a learning disability at just 8 years old. Seth is an intuitive business coach, medium, and healer with 3 international bestsellers. Welcome, Seth.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I don't know who's more excited, you or me. Now, I want to know, your greatest accomplishment is surviving to 44? What?
Yeah, it's been a life. It's been a crazy, crazy life. I mean, surviving so many deaths in my life, surviving 2 kidnappings, surviving cancer. I mean, it's been quite I am so grateful to be here. Goosebumps, right? But I'm so grateful to be here, I continue to tell myself in my affirmations every day that the present is the gift. So being here now is such a gift. And it's so hard to remember that all the time. But that's why I say my biggest accomplishment is getting here. Okay. Well, it would be remiss of me not to say kidnappings. What? Someone's going to go. If she doesn't ask him about kidnappings, I'm breaking up with her. Well, I say kidnappings because it's held at gunpoint by 2 different cartels in 2 different countries. So once when I was 18 in Colombia, outside of Bogota, and the other one was in Mexico about 11, 12 years ago. And that was held at gunpoint. They wanted to take the car, and I somehow saved myself in the car. Then the next month they did take the car, they stole the car. So, but I was,
okay. If people aren't watching the video podcast of this and are just listening, I'm gobsmacked. Any PTSD after that? How did that affect you?
Well, I think I just kind of wrote it off as it's just a normal day. For 2 or 3 months. And then when the car was taken and my bodyguard was kidnapped and beaten within a pulp of his life, or a minute of his life, that's when it became real that, wow, that could have been me. And I'm so happy that I had a kidnapping light situation, or a just being held at gunpoint with 6 guns at my head situation and they didn't beat me up. And so I just became really fortunate, but it took years. I didn't tell my parents for a couple of years. I definitely left that job after that. I loved the job, to be honest. It was amazing. It was, even when I talk about it now and I tell the whole story, I feel like I need to have a martini in my hand, because it's still. We
should have been recording this podcast not at 11 a.m., maybe 11 p.m.
There was a lot to work through on that. But I'm just so grateful to be alive.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. All right. Yeah. Well, we're talking about inclusion today, and clearly this is part of your lived experience, but you did complete a questionnaire that every guest does, and you ticked 6 identities from a really long list. What were they for you?
So I know I clicked that I was a cis male because that's how I identify. I present as a white male, which is terrible to me. It just makes me feel gross. But I consider myself to be bigender. I am definitely, I have a husband. So that means therefore that I lean mostly towards gay. I am, and then I'm Jewish. So from an ethnic and cultural standpoint, the only time I denied my Judaism was when I was in Egypt. for a couple days. I
For
figured
safety
it was
reasons.
safe. Yeah, for safety reasons, right? And then I leaned into the Italian part of my the other half of Italian.
Right.
Yeah. So those were my identities.
Okay. Where do I go from here, Seth?
Anywhere you want.
um, let's try to help people understand about gender identity and
Okay.
how you were saying that you present as white male. And then you were saying sort of more about your fluidity, was it? Or what is it
Yeah.
around that gender identity? Can you help people understand that?
I've done a lot of research on this because I've spent a lot of years in human resources. So I am always about, I hate the boxes, right? But I get so upset when payroll companies are like male, female, other. I just think that's gross and they're getting better. But for me, I researched two spirit or bi gender. So essentially, and I've spoken about this with all my gay friends. I feel like a woman trapped. I don't know what color I am, but sometimes it changes, right? Like sometimes I'm a Latina woman, sometimes I'm a Black woman, sometimes I'm a Jewish woman. I just feel very much like I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. And I've spoken to many of my gay friends about that. And, they may joke about it, be like, oh, yeah, that's my inner Aretha Franklin or whatever. But I actually really feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I love wearing dresses, like, and not in a way of like drag. I mean, I love doing drag, but that's what it's now labeled. But I love dresses and I love just being in dresses. There's something that comes out in me that's more feminine. So I can sometimes I feel more female than male, and sometimes I feel much more male than female. That at the same time, I'm sure we can be pretty open. Like I love my penis. I love it. And I love boobs. So I'm sorry, that's probably rude. I
It's
love
not.
breasts. Okay.
No, it helps people. Like it's real.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
um, yeah, so all of that together, I think the closest thing I ever found was two-spirited because I feel like, or all-spirited because I just feel like I have both spirits within me.
Okay. And
Is
so
that
good because you can imagine. So someone's new to learning about gender identity and gender expression. They'll be like, but doesn't that mean he's trans? But you've explained it's not trans because you're not one or
yeah,
the other.
right. And
Okay.
I
So
don't want to be a woman. I mean, so for the clothes, I would love to be a woman, but
yeah.
that's, but I make do being a man.
And then, of course, so we can kind of sort of talk about that gender expression thing. So, from
Yeah,
the inside, we get to express some of that femininity that you feel on the inside by wearing a gorgeous dress.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
have a Marilyn Monroe dress. I have what I call as my fuck me boots that I wear every once in a while. They're beautiful
I've got a
white.
pair of those or two as well.
Nice. Awesome.
Okay,
Awesome.
so when are we going out to wear these suits for our 11 o'clock martini?
Let's do it. They're
Yeah.
like 6-inch platforms. It's they're amazing.
So where are you based? Where are you living?
I live in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Okay, so Los Angeles is quite an inclusive environment. Did you grow up in Los Angeles?
So I was born in Boston. I spent 16 years of my life there. Then the soundbite is I then basically moved to New York to go to college when I was 16. So I grew up in New York City. And then I came out here when I was about 25, 26. And I really feel like I became an adult here in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I have small town, New York, and LA in me.
Okay, let's lean a little into that small town growing up experience and little Seth.
Little Seth. Yeah.
Little Seth who doesn't maybe yet know who he is and he's finding out who he is. Can you tell me about that lived experience for you?
I was always who I was and who I am. So I was very flamboyant. I mean, my mother has this amazing picture when I'm 8 years old of me, like with my pinky out, taking this picture, like the gayest picture ever, and I was like, oh my God, I miss those overalls, that kind of thing. And my mother always knew too, there was something unique about me. So they just let me be whoever I wanted to be. I'm really lucky that I grew up, and it was also New England. So I feel like New England is very progressive. I was the first one to come out in my high school though. And I set a trend. They said, or I like set the precedent, I guess.
I think that's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Sexual identity isn't a trend.
No, I know.
But I can see how that would have been
they
perceived
felt
that
it.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, for me, it was very real. I wore shorts on the outside of my pants and had crazy hair in high school. So,
You made it
I
safe for people. You were the
I
representation.
I was. I really, really was. I really
I
was.
love
And
that.
when people see, like, people are like, oh yeah, like now when people come out from my high school, they're like, thank you so much for being like the first one to come out. And, and I'm like, oh, it would have been so nice to have friends to come out with.
Yes.
But I did it by myself, because that's who I am.
Go you. There has to be the first crazy person to stand on that hill before others can join them. So
Yes. Yeah.
well done on being
I'm
that crazy person.
yeah. I'm nothing if not unique.
I want to actually talk a little bit about the role of religion
Okay.
in sexual identity
Okay.
and how that intertwines, how that affects you, how it played out for you.
I have been very fortunate. We didn't go to synagogue every Friday night, and observe the Shabbat, or the Shabbos. So that's why I say culturally, Jewish. Since I moved to LA, I have more Jewish friends and more kind of LGBTQ friends within the Jewish faith. And, in LA, no one cares. Like, I could go to any church or any synagogue and be completely accepted. So, well, maybe let's the less conservative ones, right? So the more progressive ones. But I've never experienced any type of for my gender identity. I haven't, or even being gay. I haven't experienced any backlash from the Jewish community, which is rare, I think. Or maybe I surround myself with the right people, or the best people, or my people. I mean, to be honest, it's just much more fun to be gay too.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah, it's like
you're the best friends there are.
Yeah, and I recommend everyone get a gay friend, because we are fun, and we can be snarky, and but we want everyone to be happy around us.
So true.
Like, I mean, I know I'm generalizing.
In your work life, have you ever tried to had to mask or be something different, or have you always been able to be this amazing version of Seth?
Interesting. Like, so I've been in the HR world for 16 or 17 years. When I was 18, I spent a year by life in Ecuador, hence why I was in Colombia. And I did have to kind of hide myself for the first 4 to 5 months I was there. I just wanted to see if it was safe or not, because I knew it wasn't safe. And then as I started telling more and more people, I told my family that I live with, they were all cool with it. Then I started to meet the people, like the LGBTQ community, and it was all underground. But I met the head of, the president, who was like the president of the LGBTQ community, or there was a membership
association.
There was an association of some sort. Yeah, thank you. And he and I spoke a lot about, he was working with the government on the Constitution, because it was the second country in the world to put that it was okay to be gay in their Constitution. So I did hide there at the beginning. But after that, I kind of swore to myself I would never hide again. And I've been careful. Like, I had a job. I was working for lemon growing, hence why I was in Mexico, where I was almost kidnapped. I was the director, and in Mexico at the time, it was dangerous. It was very dangerous. And so I kind of hid myself there too, out of safety. And I would tell the people that were closest to me, and then it got out to the whole company. And I didn't, like, people looked at me strange, but I am who I am, and I'm not going to be, I might tone it down a little, right? Because of where I am, or for safety reasons. But, once people know, I'm like, this is me, and I love me. And if you don't like me, that's cool. Like, I don't need you to like me. So I'm also a medium, as you pointed out, right? So that's another identity that, like, has been something that that would be frowned upon, right? Because I was the head of HR, right? So so I was nervous. I was always nervous about coming out, not as a gay person. I was always nervous about coming out as a medium. And now it just helps. I have a client actually that told me that because they did research on me and found out I was a medium, they didn't initially choose me because I was a medium. They didn't think that I would kind of meet everyone where they're at. Now they're working with me. They're like, we should have gone with you from the beginning. And now they understand, like, oh, it's just a part of me. It doesn't define who I am from an HR perspective.
So let's say someone's listening and they're like, do you mean you didn't feel safe or out of fear of disclosing or people knowing about you being gay? Like, and they just don't think that there could be really genuine consequences for sharing. What is it that you're afraid of? What are the potential impacts of people finding out when you don't feel safe?
I think being beat up or killed is the number one fear that I have. In Mexico, is being beat up or killed. In Egypt, same thing, right? They knew I was talking to another man, so I just said that we were best friends, you know, and their best friends hold hands every once in a while. So it's
under the table.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I think it's being beat up or killed.
You and I are both sort of giggling a bit and, smiling while we're having this conversation. But
Sure.
this is very real. And
Yeah.
I'm not a memorizer of statistics, but there certainly are horrendous statistics of gay assault and murder. Increasingly less in countries that are becoming more inclusive, but still horrendously high and unacceptable. And then even worse in countries where it's still illegal to be yourself. So I want people that are listening not to think we're making light. Right. It's just we're trying, sometimes you either get depressed and angry or you look at it with lightness and humor. So that is what we're doing today.
Absolutely.
Look, you said you're married.
Yes.
Which I love. So tell me about marriage equality and what that meant to you and your husband.
Yeah, I cried a lot on that day in 2015. I cried a lot. Because I remember in California in 2008, I was at a gay bar. We were super excited about Obama being elected. And then we found out in California that marriage equality was, or I like to call it marriage equality. Thank you for calling it that, because it's not about gay marriage. It's about anyone marrying anyone else. So thank you. I appreciate that. So marriage equality was declined in the state of California. So at first, so that was rough. But 2015, when that Supreme Court, like, it was just pure elation. It was like, wow, we finally are almost normalized in the highest court, right? With the whitest of the white people, and no offense to them, but that is what they are. And the most conservative, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, and I'm still worried, to be honest. I mean, that they struck down the abortion and I'm nervous now. That wasn't your question, but
no, and it was going to be my next one.
Oh,
so
yeah. But yes, I'm terrified.
Yeah.
I'm terrified. I'm terrified that it could be taken away from me. They said, or I've spoken to many attorneys, that they can't take away marriage from people who've already been married. Yeah. But they'll try and find a way, I'm sure.
And for those listening, and I think you explained it well, Seth, that it's, for the most part, people from the LGBTQI plus community, it wasn't about being excited to get married themselves, because they may not necessarily as individuals want to get married. It was about being seen as valid and equal to everyone else. Yes. That's what it really was more about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this
I'm
fear
not a
isn't
subclass anymore.
Yeah, not a subclass, being one of everyone else. And it's, this Roe versus Wade and, this potential of now taking this away again. It's, again, not about taking away the marriage. It's about taking away equity and equality. And anyway, we could 100%. Go down a rabbit hole on that one, but let's not use that to take away from the joy of our conversation today. Okay. Now, I do want to ask around this medium part of you. And so whether it's spirituality or whatever, like, different, people will look at it in different ways and in different terms. And you're right, it can be really frowned upon and questioned. So as part of that being part of you, when did you realize that was part of you? And when did you really embrace it?
For me, I believe that everyone is psychic and everyone is intuitive. It just depends on where you are on the spectrum, right? It's a spectrum, and how much you practice and develop it. So throughout my entire life, until I was about 30-ish, I used to play parlor tricks I would literally guess where people were from upon meeting them. I was like, don't tell me where you're from. Just let's have a conversation for a couple minutes and then I can tell you. And I would get down to not only the state, but sometimes like the city or area. And I realize that was me tapping in. I call it tapping in. So tapping into their energy, right? When I was in my early 30s, I broke a pattern of dating unavailable men or men who couldn't understand my love language and I couldn't understand theirs. And it was just very, very apparent with two relationships right in a row. And I woke up in both relationships and I said, I deserve better. The second time it happened, the next day, everything opened up. The whole world opened up. It was almost as if the universe or whoever you believe in, God was like, okay, you're ready now for this gift. Or
You've
these
done your
abilities.
lessons.
You've done, yeah.
You've done the hard work.
That's what
now
I
we're going to
think.
deliver this to you.
Now, yeah. It was, yeah. I think it was all that together and it was nonstop. So at first I didn't know how to manage it at all. I don't want to say control because I don't really feel like we control it, but I would just be out to dinner with anyone and or a friend, and I would just receive all sorts of information. And for me, it started with mediumship. So, and I would say it took me about 9 months to a year to not only start coming out again, but to also start sharing and doing readings and practicing and exploring what was going on. Because I knew, like I saw Long Island Medium and I've seen John Edwards crossing over and I had kind of wanted that my entire life since The Sixth Sense came out, but I never thought it would be me. So it took a while.
Okay.
Yes.
No, okay, so hang on, before we go any further, I want to know, this, what do you call it, data, like voices, thoughts, my understanding is all mediums receive their information differently. But how did you know you weren't crazy? How did you know it wasn't psychiatric or mental illness? Because I can imagine it would be overwhelming. So how did you know?
It was very overwhelming. The reason I knew is because my information was just so accurate. Like I remember sitting at this table and this person mentioned her mother, and I just knew immediately. I got this feeling of like this beautiful gate. It was in like somewhere in California. I knew there was a pink bow on this gate. I knew that it was her favorite gate to go into the place where she lived. I knew all the stuff about the wherever she grew up, and I explained it to her, and when I mentioned like the pink bow, she's like, "Oh my God," and she started bawling, blah blah. So,
okay, now, Seth, you grew up in an environment where you felt safe. You described how your parents just knew you're a little bit left of center, and I allowed you to lean into that.
Yes.
And I guess that's part of how it fostered your confidence and self-awareness of self. And obviously, you've already said you're quite privileged in that situation and that others aren't so fortunate. What would you say to whether it's parents or communities around people that are discovering parts about themselves that aren't part of the stereotypical norm? How can they best support them?
I think there's many things we can do as a community. I tend to gravitate towards those types of situations. Communication is number one, like talking to the individual or the family going through whatever they're going through. Being of service to the family, like supporting in any way, shape, or form. And I think offering a safe space for that family or for that community or for that individual going through whatever they're going through. I think making connections, because people can feel so alone, and communication is just so important with whether it's a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 16-year-old, doesn't matter. Or 32-year-old or 52-year-old. It doesn't matter your age.
Okay, so let's say you came into my organization and you were doing an HR project, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But let's say you came into my organization. How do you know, or what can I do to make sure you feel completely safe to be completely authentic in your whole self?
I mean, like, I think that you have to authentically say to someone, this is a safe space. I want you to be whoever you want. Like, there has to be curiosity, there has to be exploration, there has to be beauty, and there has to be gratitude in all that space. So, because people can say that this is a safe space, but like they don't actually mean it. So I think when you say I think it's in your demeanor and your spirit and your intention. Because I could literally be like, oh, this is a safe space, or I can be like, I love this space. This space is everything to me, and I'm going to be authentic and vulnerable with you. And please, like, know that this is a safe space. Like, there's a very different energy around both of those.
Now, that taps right into me. But
Oh, yeah.
there are people that are way more cognitive in their thinking, and right up here at cerebral thinking, going, well, I don't know what energy means. I don't know what it's, how do I do that? So if you had 3 behaviors or actions that people could actually do to make people like you feel welcomed and belong.
I think number one is connect with them. Find a connection point. Yep. Whether that's the Raiders, whether that's the Red Sox, whether that, it could be that, or it could be a favorite movie, or it could be a genre of movies, or a yoga style or a workout style. Find a connection. Number 2 is lead by example. And then number 3 is practice what you preach. Walk what you walk. Talk what you talk. Walk what you walk.
Seth, tell me, what is it that you're doing in the world now to bring your magic and make a difference?
Well, I have a children's book coming out. It is Scout in the Series Split. It's the second in a series called the Smile Adventure series. All of the books will have an LGBTQIA component, as well as tackle a taboo, or as I like to call them, a yummy topic. So the first was about the pandemic. This one is about 2 women getting divorced. The next one is going to be about a transgender child. The following one will be about, someone dying or passing away in the family. So everything focuses on how a family navigates through a tough and challenging time. Those are like the books, right? I'm also doing speaking engagements. I'm having a TED Talk come up at some point. And then I have some courses that I do. I help people become bestsellers. So write their books fast and become bestsellers. Mm-hmm. Then, and by coaching, I call it intuitive business coaching, because I've been in corporate America for 20 something years. So I can speak the woo if I need to speak the woo, but I can speak pragmatically as well. So, and I've learned that to all sides of my brain. So I help executives essentially overcome grief. Like, that's really what I do. There's more coming too, retreats coming, but it's a lot.
I want to go on a retreat with you. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Someone recently called me an invitation. Like, my whole personality is about an invitation. And I want that to be, that's what I want to do. Like, it brought me to tears. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to be the invitation for people to be who they are and tell me what they want and open up.
Can you see my tears? I think that to be described as an invitation, ultimate compliment.
Totally. I have goosebumps.
Yeah. Well, perfect resonance then. I think we could talk for hours and hours. And I think hopefully have made a new best friend in LA. So yes. I want to thank you so much for your time today, Seth. What we're going to do is put all of your contact details, links to your book and all those kinds of things in the podcast description. So if anyone wants to get in contact or get those books, it'll be there for them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me today.
No, thank you for your time.